wonderful teachers. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. And the outline level of the presentation today, in the first 10-15 minutes, I will be highlighting some foundational components and then getting into several specific teachings from the certain lifestyle methodologies, some specific methods from the Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita, with some further guidance from, for example, the Upanishads, and a couple of quotes from some of the respected masters, highlighting progressions of attainable results, highlighting measures of progression. Now, I approach this topic with great reverence and great practicality. These are esoteric teachings, yes, but the benefits of this journey are very practical and practical benefits that can be experienced in daily life in terms of, for example, in terms of improved cognitive and mental health, in terms of improved relationships, in terms of especially improved relationships with ourselves, spiritual strength, vitality, and attainment of spiritual goals. We'll begin with a few definitions and terms. For those who have studied the Yoga Sutras, the more familiar term is Ishvara Pranidhana, which is one of the 5 niyamas, the 5 ethical observances that are essential foundational components of Ashtanga Yoga. And as Swami Gitananda explained, most authorities, most of the respected commentators on the Yoga Sutras state that the intended meaning of Ishvara in the context of the Yoga Sutras is not God, but Atman, the real self. And in modern times, the term God has taken on so much baggage and so much extraneous meaning. The term Atman is much purer and more elevated. And interestingly enough, we see that so the great Swami Vivekananda has a similar sentiment in terms of Ishvara is the Atman. And to quote an explanation from Swami Gitananda, Atman Pranidhana is often called Ishvara Pranidhana, the attentiveness to God. But I feel that it means learning to interpret the voice of the inner reality, the inner nature, the Atman. Listen to the voice of God in the quiet, obey instantly without reservation. Pranidhana is often translated as surrender. A more meaningful understanding is that Atman Pranidhana involves devotional attunement to the higher divine force within us, and then surrender of the personal will to that higher divine will after making our best effort. We do our best, and then we trust in the divine to take care of the rest. Atman as the true higher self of the individual. Atman is Brahman. Brahman is Atman. Brahman, the Paramatma, the great Purusha, known by many names, the great Purusha, the unmanifest source, the oversoul, the absolute, the Atman, called the Jiva, the soul, is said to be part of Brahman that appears to be separate. A quote from the great Vivekananda, in the Upanishads, there is already great doctrine of the Atman and the Brahman. The Atman, self, is the same as Brahman, the Lord. This self is all that is the only reality. Maya, delusion, makes us see it differently. There is one self, not many, and that self shines in many forms. And we see that same sentiment in the Upanishad examples below here. Atman, smaller than the small, greater than the great, is hidden in the hearts of all living creatures from the Kapha Upanishad. And at the bottom of this slide, one of my favorite quotes on this topic is from the Chandogya Upanishad. There is in this city of Brahman, the human body, an abode, the small lotus of the heart. Within it is a small akasha, a small space. And this is the part that I emphasize. Now, what exists within that small akasha, that is to be sought after. That is what one would desire to understand. A profound teaching that we will explore in the subsequent slides. Atman Pranidhana is a journey of ultimate transformation. It is not accomplished by intellectual study or scripture. There's great value in study of the scripture. In fact, daily exposure to scripture in the classic yoga text, the inspirational writings, is very important. But this is not an intellectual process. It is not about the glorification or preservation of the individual identity, personality, nor ego. It is much bigger than that. The infinite localized individual, the finite localized individual, transcends to reconnect with our divine self. The individual conscious awareness moves from the world of duality and the pairs of opposites to the non-dual consciousness. The drop merges into the ocean. This is a journey built upon the principles and practices taught in the great Vedic scriptures and the classic yoga texts. And our tour guides for this journey are the great authentic teachings of the great rishis, the great Vedic rishis, sages and masters. And it is a journey with the highest possible rewards. Atman Pranidhana, growth and transformation through living yoga, involves creating the best possible version of ourselves, enables many practical benefits: physical health, mental health, spiritual health, achievement of the 4 purusharthas, the 4 aims of life: artha, kama, dharma, and moksha. And we will be speaking a bit about dharma as we set our aim and our goal towards moksha. And we transcend the finite human ego personality to reunite with our eternal soul potential. Foundational component of this journey is the works that came to us through the great Maharishi Patanjali, the 8 limbs of yoga. Ashta meaning 8, Anga meaning part. All 8 parts are required to make the whole. We have the yamas and the niyamas, and I'll spend a few moments on that in a minute. And we have the recognizable list that hopefully is familiar with everyone: the asanas, the pranayama, the pratyahara, the dharana, the dhyana, and the samadhi. And we will be delving into the yamas and the niyamas, especially into the pranayama principles and the pratyahara and dharana as we proceed. The pancha yamas, the 5 yamas, the 5 do nots, the abstinences, the ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, and the niyamas, the 5 niyamas, the ethical observances. These are the do's. The priority of attaining saucha, purification, inner and outer. And we'll spend some time on this topic of purification. Santosha, mental serenity. The tapas, the disciplined life. The daily sadhana. The swadhyaya, a very important component of this journey. The self-analysis, the introspection. And the Atman Pranidhana, as has been touched upon already. And interestingly enough, Swami Gitananda referred to the Ashtanga yoga as no option yoga, with a special emphasis on the strong foundation of the yamas and the niyamas as being of paramount importance, more than essential, required for the complete journey. We have an image from a metaphorical image from the Katha Upanishad, which is very helpful. This is an image of the human body as a chariot. The metaphor is that the charioteer steering the chariot is our higher intellect. The reins on the horses are controlled by our mind. The senses are the horses that we are trying to control. Riding in the back, looking very comfortable in this image, is the Atman, the silent witness. Lifetime after lifetime, the silent witness, waiting for us to hear the inner call, to seek the higher truth, to seek the higher selves. And of course, this chariot is traveling on the road that this chariot is traveling on represents the journey of life. So the key question here is, who or what is driving your chariot? Now, what's interesting about this is that if our awareness is mostly up here in the outer fringe, immersed in the senses, controlled by the senses, as opposed to the senses being managed or with selectivity being managed by ourselves and by our mind. If that is the case, our inner self, our inner luminosity is overshadowed by the ups and downs, the turmoils, the dramas of the world, the intensities of our emotions. 2 days ago in this wonderful Yoganar series, there was a very inspiring teacher, Dr. Ramesh Bijlani of the Sri Aurobindo ashram. And he taught the mind needs an anchor, and that anchor is the soul. Now, this rider in the front of this chariot parade is in need of an anchor. And we can access our anchor through transformation of our identity. And these teachings and this journey is about the transformation of our identity, the transformation of the vantage point of where we sit in this chariot, and the vantage point of where we interact with life, interact with the world. Progressively moving our awareness from the leading edge of the bumpy ride of these horses, these senses, closer to the center, closer to the peaceful, deeper center of the Atman. And one closing thought on this chariot here, a quote from an inspiring teacher, Swami Ambikananda. I liked her book on the Uddhava Gita. It was very illumined translation and commentary. And she wrote that the charioteer who forgets this eternal presence will become absorbed in this field of action, and the chariot will continue without purpose or direction. It is by remembrance of the self, with the capital S, that control of the chariot is maintained, and the goal, full realization of the self, is reached. So how do we approach the Atman? Well, here's a first step in these teachings from the Yoga Sutras. We have from the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras, verse 41, through purity, we attain fitness for cheerfulness, for one-pointedness, for sensory mastery, and the ability of self-witnessing. So let's look at those four terms. And these prerequisites for self-witnessing: increased purification, saucha, enables increased sattva, resulting in a more positive outlook, resulting in that ekagra, that improved mental focus, that sharpness that's necessary for dharana, and decreased sensory attachment. So this term fitness, we see that in some of the scriptures. We want to attain fitness for worship. What that means is fitness for attunement. Preparing our spiritual body, the layers of ourselves, to improve our capacity to enable us to receive the vision of the divine self, the vision, the darshan of the Atman. Through purity, we become fit for darshan. So there's a term here that might be new to some folks, the term sattva. Sattva is said to be purification through sattva and the three gunas, the three qualities of nature. Just a quick overview on these three qualities of nature. The teaching is that everything in manifest creation is a mix of the three gunas. The sattva guna, the rajas, the rajasic, and the tamasic. The universal principle of luminous, of activity, of inertia. The teaching is that the whole world is a complex mix of these three gunas, these three qualities of nature. The three gunas cause maya or delusion, which binds the individual to the physical world. These three gunas create feelings of ego, attachment, and possessiveness, which cause us to identify more tightly with these three qualities. It binds us to these three qualities of physical existence. When the sattva guna is predominant in man, his mind elevates. He gains purity of heart, thought, and deed. A quote from Sant Keshav-Das. One more of these preliminary overviews. The pancha koshas, the five coverings, the five bodies, the five sheaths of some scriptures refer to the sheaths of existence. The five bodies, the annamaya kosha, the physical, the pranamaya kosha, the pranic body, the manamaya kosha, the mind body, the vinayamaya kosha, the intellect, the higher mind, anandamaya kosha, the bliss body. And the teaching is that from this outer level of the physical body to this inner level, these bodies surround at the centermost level the Atman. 2 points to make on this topic today is a teaching from Swami Gitananda. Nara, psychic dissociation, is a condition where there's a malalignment, a misalignment, a disconnect between these four lower bodies, the physical, the pranamaya, the manamaya, and the vinayamaya. And this dissociation, this nara, is a foundational cause of many disorders: physical disorders, mental disorders, emotional disorders. And this teaching is much more greatly explored and explained in Swami Gitananda's teachings. For example, in the 52-week lessons, the 52-week correspondence course. The second key point on this: the Anandamaya kosha is never out of alignment. Although the four lower bodies may be out of harmony with the highest, the Anandamaya kosha, the cosmic body, the Anandamaya kosha, the cosmic body, is never out of a line with its cosmic counterpart. The Anandamaya kosha is like a bindu within the Mahabindu, a point within the cosmic point. We'll explore this concept a little further later in the presentation in terms of this Mahabindu. But this is good news. This is our lifeline. This is our connection with the Paramatma. This is our connection with the unmanifest, with our source. here's another teaching that is a great starting point for some of the practices, the importance of some of the practices. We've got a few slides on the Yoga Sutras teachings on a shroud covering that hides, a shroud or covering that hides the inner illumination of the Atman. And from the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras, verse Sutra 52, thereby the shroud that hides the inner effulgence is destroyed. Thereby is a key term in this phrase, because thereby is referring to the three prior sutras which were emphasizing the importance of pranayama. This is explained in a quotation from Dr. Ananda from the Yoga Sutras course, taken from the book that the Dr. Ananda's commentary on the Yoga Darshan, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. In that high state of pranayama, the dark ignorance which shrouded the inner effulgence is destroyed. The vision of that divine inner light, the divine luminosity, prakasha, is obtained. The vision of that divine inner light, that divine inner luminosity is obtained. The effulgence has always been there, but it has been obscured by arrogant ignorance. Opening to the higher universal nature, one sees what was earlier hidden. The true sattvika nature of the luminosity is discovered within. Well, there's an endorsement of pranayama. Let's see what else we have on this topic. Continuing with the same sutra, thereby the shroud that hides the inner effulgence is destroyed. We have an explanation of the same teaching from Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh, who stated that the tamas and rajas constitute the covering of the veil. This is the residual effects of past karma, is the coverings of the veil. This veil is removed by the practice of pranayama. After the veil is removed by the practice of pranayama, the real nature of the soul is realized. The chitta itself is made up of sattvic particles, but it is enveloped by that rajas and tamas, just as a fire is enveloped by smoke. There is no purificatory action greater than pranayama. Pranayama gives purity and the light of knowledge shines. The karma of the yogi, which covers up the discriminative knowledge, is annihilated by the practice of pranayama. The karma of the yogi is annihilated by the practice of pranayama. Wow. This karma of the yogi, which covers up the light, binds him or her to repeated births. It becomes attenuated by the practice of pranayama every moment and is eventually destroyed. Now, interestingly, we see the same teaching in the Shiva Samhita, although the reference is regulation of breath, but that's a reference to pranayama practice, removing all of our karma. And there are some additional teachings on this same topic of the shroud covering the inner effulgence elsewhere in the Yoga Sutras. But before we leave this slide, a couple of other key points. In that a couple of other key points are that it is through the practice of pranayama that we can make this progress. It is through the practice of pranayama that we can further attune to the increased prana shakti within. The prana shakti being essential, the increased activity, the increased enlivenment of the internal prana shakti is an essential component for the expanding inner attunements. It can help us lead progressively to inner awakenings and activations. Slow and steady wins the race on that journey. but that inner Shakti is yet another enabling vehicle for our progress. And interestingly enough, as that inner Shakti activates further and we become more easily able to attune to that, it strengthens our ability to learn dharana, to learn the inner, to experience the inner dharana, which is so important. And interestingly enough, in the Yoga Sutras, one of the points made in Sutra 52 in chapter 2 is that it makes us fit. This teaching, this removal of the shroud and covering makes us fit for dharana practice, for that inner dharana practice. Moving on to a couple of teachings from other sources, the Katha Upanishad. The teachings of the Atman, the divinity, exist in the heart of all, in the hearts of all. Atman, smaller than the smallest. We've seen that quote earlier today. In the Bhagavad Gita, we have the great teaching from Lord Krishna, who speaking to Arjuna says, "O Arjuna, the Lord is lodged in the hearts of all creatures. And it is by cosmic delusion of Maya that compels all beings to rotate as if attached to a machine." I believe that rotation is a reference to the cycles of rebirth. Many scriptures state that the Atman is approachable within, described in various ways, in the hidden Akasha space, or in the cave within the heart, or in an auxiliary chakra that is near the Anahata chakra, sometimes with reference to 8 petal chakras, and called by many names, the Hridyamanas chakra, the Hritpadma, the Hridaya, the Dara Akasha, the Sacred Heart. The Atman exists in the hearts of all. From the Bhagavad Gita, the same teaching. From Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, verse 15 through 17. This is the same teaching. The Atman is within and without all that exists, animate and inanimate. So we're expanding that scope to the Atman is present in inanimate objects as well. Near and far, imperceptible because of the subtlety. The light of all lights beyond darkness, knowledge itself, which is to be known, the goal of all learning, is seated in the hearts of all. There are various mantras that can be helpful on this journey. You can be very helpful on this journey. We'll only cover one today, briefly, because this forum is not ideal to the personal instruction of mantra. But the bija, this is a teaching from the teachings of Sankeshvadas, the bija mantra and the heart's and seat of the Atman, which he referred to as the Hritpadma, the 8-petal chakra located just below the Anahata chakra, also known by many names, which we just highlighted, the Hrim bija. Hrim is the yearning heart cry of the created towards its creator. It's a beautiful sentiment. The Devi Gita. All my worship can be performed with the mantra Hrim. Of all mantras, Hrim is regarded as the supreme guide. Hrim is the point all the Vedas are trying to make clear. Hrim is the end of all learning and the beginning of true knowledge. Some powerful sentiments there, some powerful, profound teachings there. Moving on to some important teachings from the Yoga Sutras. Stopping the whirlpools of the mind. As Dr. Anandaji pointed out as he taught this recently in a wonderful online session that is still available to those who wish to take it. Yoga, from Yoga Sutras, chapter 1, verse 2. This is pointed to as a definition of yoga. Yoga is the cessation of the whirlpools of the subconscious mind. Once there is that cessation of the whirlpools of the subconscious mind, then in the third verse, the third sutra, the seer is established in the form of its real being. This is a reference to after the cessation of the whirlpools, then the individual has access to the Atman. So we have, if we do not stop these whirlpools, then our awareness becomes identified with the forms of modification, identified with these whirlpools. The teaching is that there are fivefold of these avrityas that are causing this whirlpool. This also is reference to the five kleshas, the five obstacles to yogic growth. And these fivefold vrityas, they can be either painful or non-painful. So some students, some aspirants would want to investigate this, would want to study these. What are these five vrittis? What are these whirlpools? What are these cause for? Can I study them? Can I examine them? There's a better approach. We don't want to focus on the cause of the problem. We want the cessation of these whirlpools is brought about by effort coupled with objectivity. Effort coupled with objectivity. Here's the effort, abhyasa, the self-effort, with guidance from Dr. Ananda's mother, Amachi. The 3 R's, regularity, repetition, rhythm. This is the daily sadhana. This is our continuous effort. And the second component, this objectivity that's referenced in the sutra, vairagya. This is objectivity of dispassionate detachment that must be cultivated. And the next several sutras go on to say, steady and firm is the effort. The effort is the foundation of the practice. The effort is prolonged, uninterrupted. It takes time. We have to invest that time. Having a higher purpose, a higher reverence, a higher spiritual aspiration. Vairagya is a state of supreme mastery, where there is no desire for experience that can be either seen or heard. It's doing the best we can without attachment. So looking back at the verse, at Sutra number 3 in chapter 1 of the Yoga Sutras, then the seer is established in the form of being, of its real being. This then is the reference to that cessation of the whirlpools. Then the individual has gained greater access, moving toward the Atman, moving to the Atman. Darshan of the divine, darshan of the Atman, personalized to the sincere devotee. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us that in chapter 4, verse 11, in whatever way people are devoted to me, this is Lord Krishna speaking to us, in whatever way people are devoted to me, in that measure I manifest myself to them. The teaching is that the divine being, the divine will appear to the sincere devotee in a form that devotee can understand and relate to. The Ishtadevata. This is the concept of the Ishtadevata. This is the experience for the fortunate. This is the experience of the Ishtadevata. With a reference to the Yoga Sutras, through introspectional self-analysis, we become one with our inherent divinity. And this sutra is explained in Dr. Ananda's book on the Yoga Sutras. Perfection in swadhyaya, that detached introspection, that skillful self-analysis, produces communion with the Ishtadevata, one's personal deity, one's divinity. profound teaching, a very important teaching. A couple of examples. We have some metaphorical imagery that is, it's a little change of pace. It's a little bit wild, but I'll highlight it because it's unusual, and then we'll explain what it means. In a prayer verse regarding a vision of Divine Mother Lalita, coming from the Saundarya Lahari, written by Sri Adi Shankaracharya. Blessed are the few that worship thee, the flood of consciousness and bliss, having as thy abode the lap of the supremely auspicious one, in the mansion built from gems, which yield all desires, situated in a garden on an island of gems, surrounded by divine trees in an ocean of ambrosia. My, this sounds like a wonderful place to be. We have a similar illumined imagery, metaphorical imagery from the Sharada Tilaka text about the Ganesha Loka, the abode of bliss of Ganesha, Ganesha's abode of bliss. The Chintamani Dvipa, the island of the wish jewel, is discussed in an ocean of sugarcane juice. The beautiful island of the Chintamani Dvipa dwells. In the center of the island, there is a mystical wish-fulfilling tree called the Parijata. At the foot of the tree is a great altar where Ganesha can be seen sitting here. Now, what the heck is going on with this? This is unusual. And the reason I take the time to emphasize, to spend a couple of slides on this is that this imagery is common to quite a few texts. These are just a few that I was aware of. So it comes up often. And of course, the deity that's sitting on that lotus of gems is the deity of that particular lineage. It's either Ganesha, or it's Shiva, or it's Kali, or it's Divine Mother Lakshmi. So, common to many traditions where the Atman appears as a recognizable deity. We have the jeweled altar as a lotus seat, sometimes on an 8-petal jeweled altar, within a chamber of gems, the Chintamani Graha, on an island of gems, with esoteric wish-fulfilling trees, surrounded by this ocean of ambrosia or a sea of nectar. The symbolism here, the ocean of ambrosia or the sea of nectar represents our consciousness. The jewels or gems represents the power of our thoughts, the Mani Dvipa. Now we've seen, some of us may recognize this gem, this Mani gem, the Manipura, the city of jewels, the Manipura chakra, the jeweled altar, the wish-fulfilling trees representing our thoughts, the jewels and gems representing our thoughts. So the lesson here, the teaching lesson here is that the power of our thoughts, built upon our increasing sattvic purity, creates these inner manifestations as vessels, as receptacles for attunement to our Ishtadevata. Our thoughts have the power to invite the divine Atman into our awareness. So, the power of our thoughts comes up again. Where the mind goes, the energy flows, as Dr. Ananda reminds us frequently. So, highlighting a few experiences of progress along the way, and I'll go through this quickly, highlighting some within our inner experiences. As we progress with our pranayama, our newly inspired pranayama practice based on these teachings, and our following of the yamas and the niyamas, and our doing of our daily practices, increase within our inner experiences, increase periods of peace and awareness of peace and consciousness. We're moving away from that front lead edge of that chariot horse into a more peaceful spot. Increased inner strengths result in confidence and vitality. Increased perceptions of internal energy flows, easier meditative experiences. We don't get overshadowed. We don't get disrupted by the ups and downs of life. Improved strengths of mental, emotional, physical health. Mood swings are resolved. We lose interest in unhealthy habits. This is very helpful. I love this phrase, the velocity of the mind slows down. As we do our practice, as we strengthen that internal dharana, as some of that covering that's hiding the luminosity of the Atman is gradually moved away, the velocity of the mind slows down. Those whirlpools of the mind are starting to become under control. Increased physical health and vitality. The triggers that can cause anger dissipate. Impulsive reactive behaviors are replaced by actions rooted in clarity and wisdom. Luminosity of the Atman and Prajna, the highest wisdom. Luminosity shines forth when blessed by the higher self in the thoughtless state. Adhyatma, meaning that which is of the self itself, that highest self. This can be interpreted as the highest state of purity that exists. Now, this is the first of 3 verses from the Yoga Sutras, 3 of my favorite verses on that prajna and on the approach and the proximity of being with the Atman, being near the Atman. In the next verse, Ritam Tatra Prajna. The highest wisdom is obtained in this state. At that point, when we are enshrined in this supreme experience, the highest wisdom, prajna, dawns. We can experience that reality of reality. The highest wisdom cannot dawn until the small individual egotistic I is exiled once and forever from our consciousness. Data, information, knowledge, even lower forms of wisdom may be possessed by the ego, but one can never obtain to that real prajna until the ego submits to the divine will. When this highest wisdom dawns, one finally knows all there is to know. This is a teaching from this sutra. This marks the end of limitation, bondage, distortion, and hallucination. Only pure universal wisdom shines in its own space and place. And the next of these 3 verses, this wisdom is beyond anything related to that which can be obtained through the senses. And this next quote on this teaching is from a wonderful YouTube, an 8-minute YouTube that Dr. Ananda created quite a few years ago. It's got to be one of my favorites. And the quote of Dr. Ananda on this teaching: when we can go beyond our own limited individuality, we start to tap into that beautiful prajna loka, where we know all that is to be known, a beautiful state of being, definitely a state of being that is very much more than worth giving up our ego for. May we all attain to that prajna loka. May we all realize the blessings we have to be born as a human, an opportunity to make this self-effort, the prushartha, to go through the process of dharma, artha, kama, attaining moksha, those 4 aims of life. And as Swamiji so beautifully told us, health and happiness are your birthright. Claim them. Moksha, liberation, freedom, kaivalya is your goal. Attain it through yoga. May we all make his words come true in our own life. This is my wish for all of us in this beautiful yoga satsanga. Needless to say, I was very excited when I pulled that quote out of the recording recently. A brief point on the fact that these teachings on this highest wisdom, this prajna, shows up in other parts of the Yoga Sutras. So there's a reference for further study. Well, we're nearing the end of this presentation. We've got several more teachings, but we're approaching the end. And it looks like we got an upgrade to our chariot. We've got Lord Krishna and Arjuna guiding us on the dharmic field of the Bhagavad Gita teachings. And we've got some teachings on Dharma, Atman, and Brahman. Dharma is the spiritual law. Dharma refers to those underlying forces which sustain order in the entire universe. In our lives, swadharma, personal dharma, increases through actions which are in harmony with these universal forces. So, organizing my notes here, I've got a brief teaching to share on some key points here, starting with the question, where and when does the unmanifest manifest? One answer to this question, one important answer to this question involves the pranava, the primordial Om vibration, as the first vibrations of Brahman, the first vibrations of creation at the start of our universe, the universe of our physical and celestial lokas. We have the creation stories, teachings from multiple traditions that point to the primacy of sound vibration. But and this is wonderful and inspiring and important teachings, but I'll point out that the creation stories are about the past. But what about right now? The pranava is still here. It's still vibrating at some subtle esoteric border between here and there, between the manifest realms of our world and the transcendental Paramatman, the great Purusha. That pranava is still vibrating. Now, the Rig Veda is also a creation story. It is said that the Rig Veda points us to the blueprints of creation. Blueprints of creation, wow. Such extraordinary blueprints would need to contain great knowledge, including knowledge of the universal forces of order, dharmic forces of order. So where might these blueprints of creation be? Perhaps these blueprints of creation relate to the prajna loka, the realm of universal wisdom and knowledge. We see in the Yoga Sutras, chapter 1, verse 47 that we just highlighted, that when we attain an elevated purity and gain increased access to the luminosity of the Atman, we are led in the very next sutra verse, the very next Yoga Sutra verse, to that Ritambara Prajna, pointing us toward that universal wisdom, knowledge, and that realm of prajna. We have the teaching here that Atman is like a bindu, related to the Mahabindu. The Mahabindu being that great cosmic point, and our vocabulary breaks down. Our words are three-dimensional and temporal, and we're on the borderline of the transcendental, the non-physical, the non-dual. So we have the teaching that the Atman is like a bindu, related to that Mahabindu. The Mahabindu being that great cosmic point between the unmanifest and our physical and non-physical universe. So that link, that bindu link within us, can be within our reach through these practices, through these teachings, through the steady, sustained practice. There are teachings in the Mandukya Upanishad and the Dhyana Bindu Upanishad that teach us some of the similar topics of the Prajna Loka, and teach that Prajna Loka state of universal wisdom and unlimited knowledge is realized in states of in a state of consciousness of deep silence in the proximity of the Atman. The teaching in these is that in these states of deep silence, there is greater order. Does this greater order mean the forces of Rita, which was the earlier term in the earlier Vedas that became replaced by the more popular term, the Dharma, the universal law? Would this mean that the forces of Rita, the forces of Dharma, are stronger in this realm of the Atman, in this realm of the Ritambara Prajna? So as we try to imagine this path to the Atman, a transformation from individuality to reunite with the Paramatman, we can create a vision for ourselves. And as we work to increase our sattvic purity through our daily practices of living yoga, we gain further access to that inner luminosity that has always been within us as we seek harmony within Dharma, within and in all parts of our lives. Which brings us back to this point on this slide about increasing our alignment with the Atman, helps us increase alignment with Dharma, producing greater harmony and easier fulfillment of our sattvic goals. We have this same teaching. We move on to the highlighting the Swadharma in these last couple of slides today. Swadharma, the personal Dharma, is that path of action that best works to resolve your personal Dharma. And the popular teaching that's somewhat well known from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 35. It is better to strive in one's own Dharma than to succeed in the Dharma of another. Nothing is ever lost in following one's own Dharma, but competition in another's Dharma brings fear and insecurity. So through that swadhyaya, that inner introspection, that self-reflection, that attuning to ourselves, we aspire to find our dharmic path. The Uddhava Gita teaches that increased sattva enables dharmic support. Sattva arises by association with sattvic things. Dharma, Atman, and Brahma. How to increase sattva, increase dharma, increase our opportunities for Atman Darshana and align with Dharma. A partial list, just to highlight a few. Of course, we start with the foundation, the yamas and the niyamas. The yoga practices of purification, pranayama. Yoga practices focused on spiritual goals. Practices involving inner attunement, that pratyahara, the dharana, dhyana. The pratyahara, which is enabled by our previous work in purification. It's strengthened by our prior work. The ability for us to have that internal dharana is strengthened by our prior work. The pratyahara we didn't spend much time on, but it's so important in terms of shifting the expenditure of energy that are going external through our senses to that inner attunement. And when we do that, the inner illumination, there's more energy in our inner field of perception. It empowers our inner awakenings. It empowers our inner vision of those awakenings. And that greatly facilitates our progress. The daily sadhana, the harmony between the koshas, the lifestyle behaviors to increase sattvic purity, the people and places we associate with. We become the company we keep. Vivek, discernment, where we put our attention. The energies we ingest through books, television, movies. People think of a healthy diet in terms of food, physical food, which is very important. But what we ingest in other ways is very important. Moving on to the concluding slide. Concluding with some additional measures of progress along the way. As our thoughts and desires are increasingly sattvic, increasingly aligned with Dharma, as has been highlighted, the deeper meditative experiences come more easily. Our goals meet less resistance and are more easily accomplished. The right choices and actions come more easily. The teaching of the means gather around sattva. The means is referring to the resources to accomplish our goals, gather around sattva. This is a beautiful teaching, and it's when we are increasing our alignment with Dharma, our goals and objectives are more in keeping with Dharma. So we receive a positive response from the universe. The wind is at our back. The way is made clear. There's the synchronicity. that prajna, that highest wisdom, will flow through you when you have achieved that balance, after having persevered with the correct practices for as long as it takes. And a wonderful quote from the Ramayana about Dharma as a foundational component of life. Prosperity arises from Dharma. Happiness emerges from Dharma. Everything is obtained by means of Dharma, for the world has Dharma as its essence. And so, with that, I bring thanks to Dr. Anandaji. I bring thanks to this community, to the CIDR team. You may have noticed that I enjoy being a cheerleader for these great teachings. That's my favorite definition of my role, as a cheerleader for these great teachings. And one point of clarification, I've referenced lots of Upanishads. I don't want to give the wrong impression. I'm a beginner student of the Upanishads. I happen to have a lot of references to the Upanishads because this is one of my favorite topics. So I seek out my favorite topics that inspire me. So I just thought I'd add that as a footnote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sri Bharata, for that very, very enlightening journey. An enlightening journey